to the computer, and welcoming you all to this month's exchange on the 11th of August at 1 p.m. Andrew Peterson is my name for those of you who may not know me, but I suspect that most do. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And to our session today, we've got a stellar lineup of speakers, if I can get to my actual speaking notes, which would be really helpful. So, big welcome to you all, both to members and guests. As I always say, a quick reminder that we are recording today's session for member-only access via Insider, which will be uploaded by next Monday, and it will also be publicly available to you all, certainly to those who've attended via our YouTube channel shortly thereafter. Okay, so today we're welcoming Richard Evans from Talent Nation, Graz van Egmond from Banksia Foundation, and Barbara Nebel from ThinkStep Australia, New Zealand. And we might throw first to Richard because the big discussion, one of the big discussions at the moment is the future of ESG employment. And as you may have gathered in a couple of previous sessions, we've been asking a couple of other professionals who have been releasing reports about the state of the consulting world. I thought it was timely to ask one of our members, Talent Nation, to come and give us a deeper understanding of what's going on in this world, because whether it's the geopolitical environment, whether it's Trump, whether it's uncertainty in relation to pre-election, whether or not there was going to be a debate, issues in relation to the ESG agenda, now that we have the return of the Albanese government, what does it actually mean? And so, without further ado, let me welcome Richard to the fore and to give us his thoughts on where the talent market is up to and what organisations need to think about as that demand for sustainability professionalism continues to shift. Richard, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Great to be back here again. Yeah, look, it's great kind of lead in terms of all the uncertainty that we've seen over the last 12 to 18 months. And just to, I guess, set the scene, I think most people know who we are. For those that don't, Talent Nation's been around since 2012, focusing on environment, sustainability, ESG when that became a thing about 5 years ago. Probably stopped doing ESG when it disappears again shortly. But every role has a positive social or environmental impact. The majority of our clients are listed entities, about 70% of our work in that space, and 30% for not-for-profits, B Corps. Founding B Corp in Australia, I think there's 4 other entities that certified before we did. So we've been in that space for some time. Carbon neutral, 1% for the planet member. So walk the talk there. I guess that what that means is that we're pretty deeply embedded in the space, and being in recruitment, we can be a bit like the canaries in the gold mine or coal mine. No more coal. No coal? Okay, no coal. The canaries are dead, Andrew.
Now, canaries nestling under the solar panels.
Right, okay. Yeah, but do they die when things, yeah. Right. So I guess when the market slows down, we feel it pretty quickly in terms of organisations starting to slow up, and I think across the space we've certainly seen there's been a few redundancies in recent times. This is personal opinion. I think what we're seeing, or what we've seen over the last couple of months, is probably something that if organisations had been more organised, they would have done 12 months ago. So it's that slowdown where they haven't responded quick enough, and it's slowing down now, but we're actually starting to see it pick up again. So I think we will see things start to reverse in the next couple of months. So broadly, for all the reasons that you spoke of, Andrew, the geopolitical uncertainty, uncertainty as to whether or not ASRS would be unwound. The broader economic environment meant that it was pretty tight. What we've seen within this space over the last few months is, I guess, leadership roles and those senior roles have really pulled back in terms of organisations where we have seen roles been made redundant. They have been at that head of or senior strategic level. Also, organisations that have maybe been in more of a leadership position than some of their peers. Organisations are taking that as the opportunity to go, okay, we'll wait for the laggards to catch up with the compliance requirements around ASRS. And so they're just taking their foot off the accelerator a little bit, which is fraught with danger, because what's happening is they're removing that senior layer and they've got early mid-career professionals in place that are technically really strong, really competent. They know as much about the incoming legislation as others, but what they lack is the exposure to the exec, to the board, positioning a business case for the CFO who's got other priorities, and will be quite short with them in terms of rejecting what they need to do. And so we're finding resilience is becoming a big thing for people at that kind of early mid-career level, because they're being exposed to a lot more pressure early on without that mentorship and without that support. That it's almost the unseen part of a head of or a CSO, is that managing the senior relationships. So from the talent perspective, we're seeing a lack of those senior roles. We're seeing quite a bit of turnover at that kind of mid-career level. And I think it's going to get worse over the next 12 months, like where the panic button hasn't been hit by organisations just yet in terms of hiring. Not just yet. There's still this belief that they can use consultants to
fill those gaps,
do their reporting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The consultancies are struggling to meet their existing demand and trying to upskill. And it's challenging for a consultant to actually step into an organisation, because one of the issues will be data integrity and actually getting hold of the information. Very hard to do when you're being airdropped in. So
is there any, are you noticing any discernible difference between the private sector and the public sector? My proof point there is dear friend and colleague John Connors moved into Net Zero Authority, but we're seeing a lot of certainly executives in upper management in New South Wales government being let go, being asked to take voluntary redundancies. Not specifically in the ESG space, admittedly, but there does seem to be a sort of a squidginess going on inside the public sector, and is that having any ripple effect in relation to environmental roles, tasks on climate change reporting that government itself is going to have to start doing in the not too distant future? Are you seeing any difference between the two sectors?
Not specifically, like not at this stage. And I think I don't know, if you ask someone to take a voluntary redundancy, is that still voluntary? I'm not sure.
Did they go, or were they pushed?
Yes. Yeah. It's a consistent thing that we're seeing at the moment. Like, organisations are trying to cut costs where they can. Public sector's no different. Like
So
everyone's
where's
under the
momentum?
spotlight.
Where is growth at the moment, if anywhere? In
Growth
the
at the
middle
moment,
band and the lower data entry?
It's the middle band. So it's a lot of there's still some Group 1 entities that are not prepared, or haven't even started. So we're seeing like that Group 2 level, that it's their first sustainability manager role or head of role that they've had within the organisation. So they're wrapping their head around exactly what they need. So we're spending a lot of time working with companies in terms of going, right, okay, this is what you've defined, but what are your priorities over the next 12, 18 months?
And are they public or are they private companies, or family-owned companies?
All of the above.
All of the
So
above.
all
All
of the
right.
above. So it's more about the threshold that they sit within rather than the public or private. You find the larger entities listed that are within real estate. They've been reporting under GRESB, or they've
Mm.
they tend to have um, their house in order and are a lot better prepared. It's more the ones that sit on the cusp. So either a large private entity that has not had to report previously, or maybe has reported under ENGAS, um, but they're not having to respond to investor queries or demands. So they're the ones that are really starting to come through that we're seeing. But yeah, it's not so much a case of whether they're listed or not.
And last question for me before I open it. We have Barbara from ThinkStep Australia, New Zealand, which prompts the question, do you have a line of sight in relation to New Zealand companies? And if so, is there any difference or similarities going on there?
Um, it would be great to get Barbara's perspective on this. So New Zealand's an interesting one in terms
In
of
so many ways.
well, I'm a Kiwi, so careful. Um,
As am I
I say,
always?
yeah, a Kiwi or careful?
No, the latter.
Okay, just checking. Um, I think the economy's been particularly challenging
Yeah.
within New Zealand. So we're actually this afternoon we'll be launching our remuneration report, going out for data for this year's report. And I guess what we've noticed over the last couple of years is that New Zealand gets hit a lot harder with the economic slowdown than Australia does. I think you know, we are still the lucky country, despite what people are um, trying to say externally. But feels like New Zealand has been hit a bit harder, year ahead in terms of climate reporting. Uh, yeah, but it feels like it has stabilised a lot
Mm.
more over there. But again, Barbara will be closer to that than I am. It's always interesting because we're seeing the turnover, and Barbara, I'm sure you're the same, that companies will go, oh, you must love it. It's great, all this turnover, people leaving, and it's terrible because, we want stability. We want people to go in and actually lay the foundation. When there's a lot of turnover, it impacts the momentum that the organisation has. It has a knock-on effect on the sector. It's not good for the individuals either if they're moving from one role to the next. Um, and I think a lot of it is that lack of understanding around the support that people need when they step into these roles to help them navigate the organisation. And I think New Zealand's no different there.
Okay. Anyone got any questions of Richard they'd like to ask or any comments?
I've got a question.
Hiru, introduce yourself, where you're from, please, nicely.
Hi, Richard. I'm Hiru. I'm from Note Printing Australia, where we print banknotes and money for the Australian government and passports. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm the sustainability manager. Um, this, I've noticed that despite the mandatory regulatory requirements, companies are kind of losing their appetite to invest in sustainability overall. Is that a fair statement?
Uh, so I would normally say yes to that in terms of what I've seen, and again, it's that leadership piece. It's doing things beyond what they have to do. Um, and saying that, I've got one client that I always look to in terms of. So I'd say that we're the canary, but they're the canary for us because they're a growth company. They're a REIT, so they move very quickly. So when the market slowed down, they contracted really quickly. They're now starting to do more. So they're seeing the opportunity around
Mm.
around growth. So they are being progressive. Um, Sally McGrath was on a panel last week at the AICD Climate Governance Forum. And the question was asked of her in terms of, what is she seeing from boards in terms of things slowing down, it coming off the radar. And for her, she said the boards that she sits on, so she's on Blue Scope amongst other other boards, she said, no, it's definitely front and center for us. We're not, the boards that I sit on, the organizations are not pulling back from this. They're not looking to withdraw. Sat next to a client who's they're an investor, and they own a lot of large infrastructure assets across Australia, but also globally. And I asked the same thing of him, and he said, no, the boards that we're on, we're not letting them take their foot off the pedal, because okay, there's a slowdown now, but their infrastructure assets, it's a long-term play. It'll cycle back around again, and we don't want to have to restart the process again. So, so I think broadly the narrative out there that tends to hit the media is, yes, things are slowing down, things are tightening up, and we're seeing some of these leadership roles disappear. But I think it's a blip rather than, something that we'll see play out long term.
Thanks, Richard, and
Okay,
thanks
for that. Last question to Claire. And before I forget, when we close the session, Richard, can you make sure you put your email address in the chat, because everybody will be able to see it. If you've got a direct question for Richard about anything he's raised or anything else, by all means, give him a shout out. Claire, well, your question, please.
Hi, Andrew, and thanks, Richard. And for everyone else, Claire Anderson, I'm from Worley. Richard, it's great to see you, and I'm sorry I missed you at the summit on Friday. It was a really interesting summit, and one of the things I really took away from it, and I guess my question is about, what you took away from it, but certainly there's a real sense at that board level on the importance of the reporting, and a real sense of urgency that you have to be preparing for it. It's a lot of work. We know that, we're deep in it. But then there's this disconnect with, what you were saying at the start about sort of certainly those leadership roles disappearing. It just feels really unsettling that this is all going ahead, yet, these leadership roles are disappearing. And I guess I wanted to understand from you if you get that same sense that Australia might be in a bit of strife with trying to meet these reporting requirements more broadly. I mean, I guess people will get there by hook or by crook, won't they? But
they will. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. I was a little shocked. So Kate O'Rourke was there, the asset commissioner.
Yes.
And I don't know if you picked up that there was a Group 2 parent entity that had 3 or 4 Group 1 entities sitting underneath their umbrella, and they've basically given an exemption that the Group 1 entities don't need to report till the second year because they fall under this Group 2. And so for me, I was thinking that feels like the wrong way around.
Yeah, it does.
To me.
Yeah.
So, for me, it signals that they're probably not going to go terribly hard in the first year or first couple of years. And I think that is creating some apathy. I mean, there's some nervousness around it. And Carolyn Pugsley from Herbert Smith, Freehills Kramer. I don't know. Yeah.
HSFK.
So she made a great comment a while ago where she said, the room here is divided into two people: those that are really nervous about reporting and those that aren't. And that tells me that half the room knows what's expected and they're nervous, and the other half
doesn't.
doesn't realize what's happening. So I think there's an element where it will be very clunky. I think there is a sense of calmness in terms of people aren't sure what's required. There's also the element of, well, does it sit within the office of the CFO, or does it, what is the role of sustainability in that? And it is also a bit of a throwback to kind of 10 years ago where the report was the end result, creating the sustainability report or the DJSI submission, like that was the end result, and that was how you measured yourself. And we've kind of moved past that, where you go, okay, well, you do the reporting, but that gives you your roadmap of what you want to do and how do you improve. So I think there will be this tension between the compliance and the value creator. So it's that kind of risk opportunity piece, and we're very much sitting within the risk space at the moment. I think the leadership piece will come back on, but it's almost, almost feels like there needs to be a rebranding exercise where sustainability has been seen as, okay, well, it's from the heart, it's the nice to have. It's like, whereas this is now, okay, well, there's a material impact, and directors can go to prison if it's not done well. And so I think from that leadership role, it's about going, yes, okay, this is where we want to go to, but making it really clear that probably the main job is to keep them off the front news of the fin. Or
Fin's the last one to worry about. It's the Daily Telegraph or the Herald Sun you got to worry about, isn't it?
I haven't got your subscriptions, Andrew, so yeah.
I can lend you mine.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.
Let's now welcome Graz van Egmond, the CEO of the Banksia Foundation, who is a longtime friend of BCSDA's and in turn, a friend of, or a deep affiliate member, friend of our organisation as well. Graz, tell us more about what's going on in the world of preparations for the New South Wales Awards, the national awards, and also, I guess, just generally, how's the sustainability story challenge going at the moment?
It's an interesting one. Hopefully, I'm a little bit more optimistic than Richard, trying to present possibly a picture. But I must admit, a few months ago, I was very worried. We were really looking at, and what Richard was saying, where the leadership, the number of personnel that I had developed relationships over so many years, just absolutely leaving organisations en masse, which really worried me. The awards themselves, I must admit, this year, and I'm starting to feel a little bit of a change. Even the last month, we've opened the New South Wales Awards, and the entries are coming in. But it's really interesting. People are a little bit more optimistic, I think, from the general discussion from was a few months ago. We're finding this year that there's a clear shift from ambition to execution also in our entries. There was a lot of, we will do this, we will, that sort of aspirational. We're seeing now, and the judges are fantastic in identifying that, and I must commend our judges because we feedback on every single entry. And they do comment on the fact that, the aspiration is fine, but what is the outcome? What are the results? Where are you, where are you actually heading? So we see more organisations be a lot more grounded with these practical solutions, not just being future orientated. And I think one of the most exciting shifts that we've seen is the regional. This year in New South Wales Awards, we've got a lot more regional projects, and councils. Councils are really putting up their hand and sort of standing up and taking pride in what they're doing. And it's wonderful working with all these amazing organisations in helping them put their entries together and understanding what they are achieving. And there seems to be also a lot of youth-led in the innovation space. The amount of startups and youth-led ventures that are actually putting their hands up is fantastic. One of the things that we're really looking at Banksia in our new strategic focus is maybe not the term sustainability, but what is the intergenerational capacity building? What is the intergenerational resilience that we're leaving? And it's not just that one soundbite. How do we continue to build on it? The other thing too, I think there's been a bit of a change is, I suppose the traditional, is it just a carbon metrics towards, what they're doing? We're looking at a lot of the entries are coming with a much more holistic approach, sort of integrating nature positive, social equity, procurement reform, supply chain transformation, and really people having a go at this. A few years ago, I could see we were struggling in some of these areas, but now there's a real maturity, and that leadership, I think, is really there. So, and I suppose one of the things, and I don't know, Richard, it's to do with leadership, but I'm finding that, especially in larger organizations, it's not the domain of one organization or one department anymore. I think it's being spread around a little bit, and people are starting to understand their contribution. And I think the role of a sustainability leader is very much trying to engage and give the various areas their leadership value and what they're going to acquire. So I think that's really changing. So I think you can call it a maturity. I just think that I suppose the whole sustainability issue and ticking all the SDGs is no longer sort of one department. It is being spread out a little bit, whether it's council, organisations, even as I said, community groups and what they're doing. They seem to be spreading it a little bit further. So that's probably the change that we've seen, Andrew.
And just remind me of dates. New South Wales Awards are when?
We close entry on the 9th of September, and if you're nice, you can sneak in a few days later if you're nice to me, depending on, it's like doing your homework at the last moment. But look, it's a really, I think it's really important that people understand and take that time out to really look at external criteria, what you're doing, because we're just in that, continual, just producing, and I think the point that we need to start reflecting on what we're doing and bringing in people and understanding what we're achieving, and I think this is really important.
Yeah. So the awards, let's talk about New South Wales. They are for projects and or people or teams in New South Wales.
Yes.
And in the case of them being successful, particularly winners, then they are then elevated to the national awards, are they not?
They are. This year, we're postponing the national awards till next year. We've pushed them back to a calendar year.
Yep.
So so if you become a winner of the New South Wales Awards, you automatically go through to the national awards. And we've had some amazing winners come through, as I said, from the New South Wales, from that state level going through to national level.
Yeah. Well, I always remind myself of Samsara being the poster child of success, because they are now being sought after by so many in the capital markets now for the innovative circularity approach. And you think, well, proof of the pudding is in the way in which that startup received its recognition, worked with Graz and the team there, received its recognition, and then has built upon that as a success story of Australian enterprise and innovation, all because of Banksia. Well, in part because of Banksia.
Well, in part, but interesting, we had the EU ambassador at the Banksia Awards, Gabriel Vesetan, who I was sitting with, and we had a contingency from Poland. I'm creating
Why would that be, Graz?
Well, I don't know. With a name like Grażyna, that could have something to do with it. But no, I'm working with the Polish government. We're looking at companies coming out here and sharing their technology with Australian companies. There's some really cool stuff happening in Poland, and they actually came to the Banksia Awards. But one of the things that, and we always looked at the EU, like the EU's leading and what's the EU doing? But Gabriel and we had the foreign minister and the minister for the environment from Poland. They were saying there's no such thing in the EU as the Banksia Awards. They said the awards there are all around compliance, ticking these boxes, but there's nothing, and Gabriel was saying there's nothing where it brings such a diverse range of people together, working in the one area and supporting each other. And the wonderful thing that I'm really proud of, especially the New South Wales alumni, and we just had an event at Taronga Zoo, but they're all coming together and supporting each other. and looking at how they can be supportive in various areas, where they're lacking, where they're not lacking. But they've all reached that leadership. They've been acclaimed by judges across Australia. And now, what is the next step so they don't lose that momentum? And there's so many amazing projects coming together with our alumni. So that in itself is that sort of ecosystem that comes together and works together.
Excellent. So, reminder, deadline for New South Wales is
9th of September.
And then the event itself is held on the
on the 9th of December.
9th of December.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes. And have you got a venue yet?
The Maritime Museum.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. And then stay tuned for the national awards. Thank you for that. Can you put the link to the New South Wales Awards program into chat in case anybody is able to, at the last minute, get their act together and put a application in? And now we'll move to welcome Barbara Nebel, the CEO of ThinkStep Australia New Zealand, for two things. For the firstly, to welcome her into the BCSD community, because ThinkStep have just joined as a member, invoice pending, and no, actually, I think it has been paid, if memory serves. Anyway, whatever, Andrew. And more importantly, because ThinkStep's a very new example of the relationship between our colleagues at Sustainable Business Council New Zealand and ourselves, because ThinkStep are a member of SBC New Zealand, and by reason of that have received a recognition and acknowledgement by coming into the BCSD family. But I'm sure that's not the only reason why Barbara and the team thought it was worth coming and joining our little organisation. So a big, warm BCSD welcome, Barbara. And yes, I will ask the bleedingly obvious, why the hell did you pick us? And secondly, what's going on in the Australia-New Zealand world that you'd like to share with us from your perspective? Over to you.
Thank you. Well, why did we pick you?
Oh God, I should have. That was dangerous to ask a question she didn't have an answer for.
Maybe I'll just give you a little bit of background, because I haven't met all of you, and I'm guessing not all of you know about us. So we are ThinkStep Australia New Zealand, have actually been around in Australia since 2006. But then, for various reasons, have been a little more out there initially in New Zealand. We are now a team of about 40 people with an office in Sydney and soon an office. We already have colleagues in Melbourne and Adelaide as well, soon offices there. What we very often get asked, because we work with so many organizations that are Trans-Tasman, a lot of our clients here are members of Sustainable Business Council or our Climate Leaders Coalition, and they ask us, well, what is the equivalent? What should we be doing to be sharing our work and connecting with others in Australia? And recommendation has always been have a look at BCSDA. But we also ourselves, we share, one of our values is actually sharing a lot of our experience and knowledge. So we have, I think, about 15 what we call need to know guides. So that's everything you need about LCA or climate reporting or circular economy, and we share those openly. We also have, I think, over 100 recorded webinars where we always have a client talking about their project, and they're all available. So we're all about sharing knowledge, and that's what I found could be a really good opportunity to also learn from your members and share with the family here. So that's, I guess, why we're here. Our projects really range from doing the initial helping a company develop their strategy, because Richard, as you said before, we can't come in and do the strategy for a company. So quite often they come and go, hey, can you do our report? Can you? No, we can help you facilitate it. And just picking on your comment earlier, Richard, it is actually easier for us if there is a sustainability champion or expert in the company who can hold it all together. In some companies, we've been working with them for 10, 12 years, ongoing on various projects. And there it actually becomes quite easy for us to hold the strings together in those organizations. But it really is useful to have someone on the client side.
Let me ask you this. In working for both Australian and New Zealand companies, and particularly if they're only Australia or New Zealand, have you noticed any differences at all in relation to their approach to sustainability, or it is fairly common or similar is probably a better way to put
Really
it.
interesting. It for a long time has been, let's say, easier to work with New Zealand companies because they were possibly a step ahead. At the moment, I think it's almost the same, to be honest. A lot of organizations come or people tell us, oh, it must be really hard for you right now because of politics. But the companies we've worked with for a long time, they're not taking the foot off the accelerator.
Yeah.
Because they realize what the business value is. The ones who need to get started find it a little harder to get over that initial hurdle. But once they realize what the business value of it is, just really moving from just we do it because of our values to we actually see the value in it. That shift needs to happen, but it's happening with more and more businesses. And once they've realized that, they're on the journey and they go.
Okay.
And that is pretty much the same really anywhere. What we have realized, again, Richard, you mentioned ESG might be no longer around as an acronym for a long time coming, but I think the CEO of the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, he just reworded it. And that's what we are realizing. It's energy, security, geostrategy. And that is what a lot of companies see. It's all about resilience, really. Where do we get our energy from? If we talk about energy, obviously we have a link to carbon as well. But at the moment, a lot of companies really look at, well, what's our resilience? Where can we still sell our goods to? They need to reorient a bit from exporting largely to the US to go to other places. So all that does hit home for a lot of our clients. But they all also see opportunities in really starting to implement those, what is now legislation. I've just had a whole week of climate-related disclosure workshops in Melbourne. And at the end, the companies all went, well, it's legislation now, but actually, it's just really useful for us. And that is that sort of light bulb moments. We see those all the time. And once
You're taking 15 years, great, fantastic. Move on, Andrew. Build a bridge. Move on. Right. Okay. Well, that's a very interesting. And just to help us, because we weren't in the room, what level of professionals were in the room? Were they senior management? Were they board? Were they ELTs?
A mix of board and senior management.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It was senior management largely, and one of the workshops there were 2 board members as well, audit and risk committee members.
And were those companies ANZ companies, or were they just Australian companies?
Headquartered in one of them is headquartered in Australia. They do have a parent company overseas, but they're a well-known brand in Australia. They do have subsidiaries globally.
Yeah, right.
And the other one actually was a subsidiary of a European company.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So it goes both ways.
Okay.
Do we also realize lots of companies still struggling with scope 3? No surprise. And once they've got their head around it, they realize we actually have an opportunity to decarbonize. And once they realize Scope 3 is not actually double counting, but joint ownership of emissions, and that concept gets into people's head, they go, oh, we can actually collaborate with our supply chain. So it's really that rephrasing it is it's joint ownership of emissions. It's a bit like you, together with your neighbor, you own the hedge between your on the boundary, and whose responsibility is it to trim that hedge? You only can do it together. And that's what people starting to really understand with Scope 3. So it's actually joint responsibility.
That's interesting. Yeah. Phraseology, joint responsibility.
And that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. But it's interesting that language is being used.
I just want to say that I think that's so great, that joint responsibility, because often this is my own experience, but with Scope 3 is kind of trying to justify why it's really important that we focus on that area and getting people's heads around it. And I'm going to take that on. I think that's very clear.
That's very interesting. Well, thank you for that. Just conscious of time. In wrapping up, Barbara, now part of the family, will be here. But Barbara, could you put your email address into chat so that anybody who wants to reach out can do so? We will be coming back to you, Barbara and myself, to announce a project that we are doing as BCSD and ThinkStep together for the benefit of members. So stay tuned for that pile or that concept note to come out for discussion. I think we've committed ourselves to getting that done within the first 100 days of you being a member. So that means it must happen before the end of September, if I remember correctly. I don't know. Today is the 11th of August. How did that happen? And so stay tuned for that. But very warm welcome, and I say that on behalf of both myself and now a very sick Mike Burrell, who texted me this morning with statements of being quite unwell, but texted the wrong Andrew. So I got to find out how he was unwell. I don't want to bore you all. All right. Well, thank you so much for all joining today. Don't forget that the next exchange is on the 15th of September, same bat time, 1 p.m. And stay tuned via Insider for who's speaking, and or if you are not a member, then stay tuned for details that'll come through via LinkedIn. As I say, we will include a copy of the recording via Insider next Monday, and for those who are guests today, you will be able to see that on our YouTube channel within the next week or two. But for now, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Stay safe, and as always, look forward to seeing you somewhere in the future. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Andrew.